Alrighty, so this is just We the People News. Okay, so heads up. Never look straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. People. Okay, non-person or person. Do not incriminate yourself. This is 19 ways that you incriminate yourself. Now I'm going to do a couple of videos to stretch this out because this is actually a long one. Okay, so I'm probably going to do two of them, and then another video, try to do another two, and all the way up to 19. But we must know this. Okay? Write it down on a piece of paper, put it in your car. Okay? Let's go.
A case where the government is coming after you. So let's say it's a traffic related case. You're traveling without a driver's license, something like that. Okay? Or this can also be if you're going on offense like what we are. So some of these things are going to pertain more so to when the government is trying to come after you. So we're gonna go through these here for the rest of the time. We're just gonna do a quick recap on rule number one. Remember rule number one, Erica?
Keep your mouth closed.
Don't say anything. Do not speak. Do not say anything. Do not pass go. Do not collect your $200. Obviously, I threw that in there. Anything you say can and will be used as evidence against you. This is the biggest rule. The reason why this is rule number one is because this is the rule that is most often violated by pro se's or by just people in general, just everyday men and women. When you get pulled over and the cop comes up to your window, the first thing we do is, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, or I was just in a hurry, or I was trying to do this. And what are you doing there? What are you doing to yourself when you say stuff like that, Erica?
You're incriminating yourself.
You're incriminating yourself. You're giving, again, you guys have to know and understand that in order for the state to prove their case, they must be able to show with evidence that you had an intent to break a law. But how can you show that you had an intent to break a law when there was no victim involved? And so now the only way they can get you on the hook is because they get you to self-incriminate yourself. So you have a right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you do so. Just don't say anything.
Right.
You don't need to. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this process and what you should do when you're pulled over and how you should act. Now, again, it's going to take, you've got to have the right temperature for this. It's going to be different for everybody. So it's going to be, like I said, it's not, a walk in the park, so to speak, sometimes when dealing with some of these members of the police state that we're living in. I mean, we had this discussion last night with that group I was with. There was, I think you remember, Erica, we talked about this. There was a gentleman, a young man who would have been, we talked about it, he would have been 22 this month. He was killed by the police last year in a traffic stop. And it was horrible. It was tragic. It never should have happened. Clearly the police were woefully and inadequately trained, and there's other things to it, and I don't want to go into that, but that's the reality of the world that we live in. So, rule number one, do not say anything. Because anything you say can and will be used against you. Okay? Do you remember what rule number two was, Erica?
It was along the same lines.
Yeah.
if you're going to get busted, it's going to be because you gave them something to bust you with.
That's right. All of the evidence that will be used against you will be furnished by you. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Is that crazy or what?
Well, this whole system to me is crazy. They just prey upon our ignorance of what their rules to the game are. Like, they're taking our good natures. It's our nature to be like, oh, hey, officer, sorry about that. I don't know. Like, that's just what a normal, good human, is trained to interact like, but they use it against us to suck us into their weirdo system.
And it's the truth, right? Because again, there's a lot of, and this is where I was going to say is there's a lot of confusion, I think, out there as to why are we being pulled into these areas here? Because when you look at it, right, I mean, if you look at the basis of common law requires in order for there to be a civil or a criminal action under the common law, there requires to be a loss of life, liberty, or property. And that's why you notice in the Constitution under the amendments where it talks about, everybody has a right to life, liberty, and property. Okay, that's your rights at common law. So a lot of these traffic stops, is there any loss to life, liberty, or property? Like if you're driving down the road and you're driving 65 and the posted limit is 40, and a cop pulls you over, who's the victim in that case? Anybody?
Nope, not one.
No, that's because there isn't. And so, and this is where I was like, as I've been listening to George Gordon, it's really opened my eyes and really made me think about things as to why do the police, why does law enforcement do what they do? Is because, well, number one, they've been trained.
Right.
This is how they're trained. They're not trained differently. They're not trained to say, hey, everybody you have contact with has rights and we can't violate those rights. No, they're trained to say the law that comes from the legislature is the gospel truth law, and if it's violated, then you have a duty to enforce it. That's exactly what it is. And so if you really look at it, all of these traffic laws are violations and they're penal codes of violations of a quote-unquote contract, right? You've heard that before, Erica? Right. So when you run down the road and you sign up for a driver's license, you're asking the government for permission to drive on your roads. Does that make sense to anybody?
No, that's why I don't do it.
Why do we need to ask the government for permission? Well, see, because I didn't know any better. I was just a good little sheeple back then. I was one of the sheeple, and I just did what I was told to do. My mom and dad said, oh, you want to drive? You got to have a driver's license. Okay. I didn't question it because I didn't know I should question it. I do now, clearly. So, but here's the problem, and this is what happens, is like when people get pulled over by the cops and they're saying, I'm not operating in commerce. I'm not operating in commerce. You've heard that story before, right, Erica and Justice? Right. You've seen the videos on YouTube where they're like, I'm not operating in commerce and all these things. And the cops are just like, I got one of these crazy lunatics here.
Yep.
And they have special trainings on that. I found that out from my security friends that they have specific they have specific training on how to deal with sovereign citizens.
Oh, jeez.
They're being directed in their mind to view people who start talking like that, like, all right, game on. Like that's what you're being already directed to. So
that's what's insane to me is like, and when you listen to these George Gordon. When you listen to these recordings of his, he says he's had interactions with judges and with law enforcement. It's like, oh, Mr. Gordon, are you one of those constitutionalists? And then he says, Judge, are you telling me you're not?
Mm-hmm.
Am I to understand? Let me see if I understand your position here, Judge. You're telling me that you're not a constitutionalist and that this court is not going to guarantee and protect my rights?
Yes. I tell my kids, always answer a question with a question.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about that here as we move on through these rules. When a cop comes up to your window, what's the first thing that you should say? What's the first thing that you should do? And really, it's going to depend. Do you have the temperature for this? Can you handle this? Can you maintain your cool? I, for one, guys, I'm just going to be blatantly honest. If I see the lights come on in my rearview mirror, my heart starts racing. I'm just like, but then after I sit there, I just have to cool down. All right, let me gather my thoughts, and then I can start acting and speaking intelligently. So.
Oh, I laugh when I get pulled over. To me, it's so funny because I'm like, oh my God, like they have nothing better to do.
Seriously.
I went 5 miles over. I don't commit any crimes, right? So when they pull me over, I just laugh. I smile the whole time, like whatever.
Well, we have to remember, too, and this has been going on, like I said, since, this was happening when Mr. Gordon was giving his lessons back in the 80s, and he calls it the law enforcement industry. The law enforcement industrial industry. So we've heard today the military-industrial complex, right? So they're trying to start wars all over the world to fund and furnish the military-industrial complex. Well, nothing is different here at home.
Right.
Are we living in a police state?
Pretty close.
Right, we are.
Yeah.
Because we've got people who walk around with badges on their chest and guns on their hips and say, if you don't do what I say, there's going to be some serious problems. And we don't have enough people who are fighting back, because what happens when the police violate their rights, they don't seek out the proper redress. Instead, they go right on down, spend their money with some bar licensed attorney who's just going to take their money and get them nowhere fast.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
And you want to be careful, especially now more than ever, because just like Erica said, they're now being trained based on the start of this. Like our poor friend Renee,
Yeah.
she started learning some of this stuff from David Strait and was led the wrong way, and she got pulled over. She called 911, which is a great thing to do, honestly.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
you're holding the police accountable, because you see how they abuse some of these people. So it's good to have 911 on the phone if you felt like, for whatever reason, you needed to. But all she kept telling the police officer was, "I am a woman. I am a woman. I am a woman." She was, and
Well,
she
and the cop is like, I can see that.
Yeah. So I called James and I said, "James, just go ahead and call her so you can talk to the cops," because she was panicking. I didn't know what to say to the police, right? So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she just outright panicked because she started learning some of these things, which are truth. Some of it's truth, wrapped up in some lies that can get you in trouble. And the bottom line is, the side of the road is not the place to pick the fight.
No, and that's what I'm hoping. If there's anything that you guys gain from this, those of you who are watching or listening, or however you listen to our show, the side of the road is not the place to have your argument.
No.
I mean, if there is any more evidence of that, just look at the police encounters with good people. It's not the place. It's not the time. It's not the place. But that is the scene of the crime.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Alrighty. So we're going to leave it at there. This is 2 of them. And we're going to be starting on the 3rd one. Alright? I'm in pause right now, just because we have been really dumbed down due to the bar members. They want us to go and pay them money, right? There's a previous case I was around. The judge completely ignored the people to benefit the attorneys. Plain out blunt. All right, this is We the People News. Till next time, bye y'all.